Snow that fell in the dead of night still clung to the broken battlements of Winterfell when the first raven crossed the reddening dawn. Its wings beat a slow, mournful rhythm over the courtyard, passing silent sentinels of hoarfrost-girded stone and the cold bronze of direwolf banners hanging limp in the windless still. From the highest tower Lady Catelyn watched it fly, one thin shadow against an infinite, pitiless sky, then vanish beyond the eastern woods. She touched the rough sill with numb fingers, tasting iron and ash on the air, remembering fires long gone out. Robb was already awake, she knew. Her son kept nights shorter than his dreams these days, pacing the yard before dawn as if he feared the light might betray him. No more songs, no more laughter. In the cracked mirror of her heart, the boy was still 10, still chasing Arya round the godswood, still begging for lemon cakes at their father's table. But the mirror lied. Robb was 19 now and called himself king. And the crown weighed heavier each morning. Below, the castle stirred. Maester Luwin shuffled through the gatehouse arch, silver chain clinking, sleeves puffed white with frost. Wounded men groaned in the infirmary barracks by the smithy. The forge lay cold, no charcoal to spare. Hounds cried out for meat that did not exist. Winterfell survived, but only just bled hollow by war and grief. The small folk whispered that the old gods had turned their eyes away after Ned Stark's fall. The heart tree still stood crimson and ancient, yet its face seemed drawn, the mouth a deeper wound, its eyes two black pools where hope had drowned. Robb Stark stood by the ring-muir spiked with wolf-head pikes, breath glazing before him. Gray wind prowled at his side, hackles ruffled, as though sensing a storm far off. Robb's mail shirt shimmered with rime. The bronze direwolf on his breastplate caught the first pale light and threw it back like fire in a frozen world. The young wolf, the bards called him. But Robb tasted none of the glory in the name. He thought instead of the cost. Talisa buried in dark earth south of the Twins. Men dead along the Green Fork, the whispering dead of Whispering Wood. Glory had a stench, and it followed him everywhere. Rot, sweat, and copper blood. He turned when Catelyn's shadow stretched across the flagstones. "Another raven from the east," she said softly. Robb neither sighed nor scowled. His eyes, gray like the sky before snow, remained fixed upon the gate. "From Castle Black," he answered. His voice was deeper than Ned's had ever been, edged with something rawer. "Jon writes of wildlings breaching the wall at the Night Fort. Says Stannis Baratheon marches north with a southern host." "A southern king who would be northern," Catelyn murmured. "And Jon, your brother writes still?" "He writes, but the distance between us is leagues too wide for ink." Robb's glove curled tight about the hilt of his sword. "He stands his post. I honor that. Yet I wonder how long vows can bind a man when his own blood burns for freedom." Catelyn felt the weight behind the words. "Freedom," she echoed. "Is that what we call it, Robb? Freedom from a crown that will not fit the North? Or freedom from brothers who might speak against you?" A brittle silence settled. Gray wind's slow growl trembled under it. Hundreds of miles to the north, Jon Snow watched icicles drip from arrow slits cut deep into ancient ice. Castle Black had been quiet since dawn. The brothers sunk in dark dreams, but Jon could not sleep. The wall itself hummed beneath his feet like a vast frozen harpstring straining against some invisible hand. He stood alone on the southern rampart, gloved palms cupped round a dull lantern, staring out over leagues of untamed forest. A memory came unbidden. The hall at Winterfell, roaring with life, Robb slamming a practiced sword against his shield while Bran cheered. They had been inseparable then. Two halves of a single heartbeat. Robb all summer laughter, Jon all quiet winter thought. That heartbeat had splintered the day Ned Stark rode south. The wall of ice behind him groaned. "You'll freeze your eyes open," Samwell Tarly wheezed, hurrying up the creaking steps with a fur-wrapped bundle. "Here, hot wine. Well, warmish." Jon took the skin, sipped, felt its poor fire spread. "Thank you, Sam. You heard the raven." Sam nodded, breath puffing white. "Lord Commander Snow, King Robb, two kings of winter in one season. It's enough to make your head spin." Jon flinched at the title. The Brothers of the Watch had acclaimed him in trembling voices after the long night's first whisper. But the black cloak lay heavy as any crown. "I am no king," Jon said. The wind snatched the words and hurled them into the darkness. Sam cleared his throat. "Your brother calls banners to hold the neck. The Boltons bend knee, they say. The Umbers stir. But Freys besiege Moat Cailin. And White Harbor sits on the fence. There will be blood. There always is." Jon handed the skin back, eyes on the horizon where dawn smeared rose petals over a colorless world. "Robb was born to lead men. I was born elsewhere. Yet you feel the pull?" Sam whispered, as if naming a secret. "I see it, Jon. In every raven's wingbeat you hear home calling." Jon did not deny it. The old bear had once told him that oaths were chains forged of honor, and honor made a cruel jailer. Jon's wrists were blood raw. Still he bowed his head. "My place is here." Sam stared at him with honest pain. "And if the realm breaks apart? Wolves devour wolves? What then?" Jon had no answer save the slow tightening of his jaw. The raven from Winterfell reached Castle Black at dusk 3 days later. It bore Robb Stark's broken wax seal and 9 terse lines of script. A king addressing a watchful brother, a plea disguised as command. "Join me or oppose me. The North must be one." Jon folded the parchment until the black ink bled through his gloves. He stood in the Lord Commander's solar, firelight flickering across rough boards and maps littered with pins. Outside the door, brothers argued whether wildlings or winter posed the greater threat. But within, only Ghost spoke. Robb's words carved a canyon through Jon's chest. "Join me or oppose me." How could any brother speak thus? Yet Robb was no longer simply brother. He was crowned in bronze and iron, judged by northern lords, each nursing old wounds from southern rule. Jon reread the letter until the lantern burned dry. At last he rolled it tight again, pressed it to his lips, and set it upon the flame. The parchment curled like dead leaves, and the ash smelled of pine sap and tears. The next night, Jon did not attend the conclave of senior officers. He climbed instead to the top of the wall, sat cross-legged in snow that glittered like shattered glass beneath a harvest moon, and prayed. Not to the 7 he scarcely knew, nor the lawler of foreign priests, but to the nameless old gods whispering in heart trees from the Wolfwood to the weeping sea. He prayed for guidance, for absolution, for Robb's life and his own soul. The gods answered in silence. Yet in that silence Jon felt a single thought bloom like frost flower on the black bark of his mind. The North must be one. When he descended, dawn bled pale across the courtyard. A horn blew 3 times, riders approaching from the south. Jon felt the last chain of his vows rust and crack. In Winterfell's great hall, fires guttered low. Robb sat the high seat beneath the snarling direwolf banner, a half-eaten trencher before him, untouched. Lords clustered round. The great Jon, his laughter dulled by grief. Lady Meage Mormont, her eyes red-rimmed from days riding through sleet. Ser Wendell Manderly, cheeks hollow after a fast he claimed was for the soul of the kingdom. Iron-addled men all but loyal and afraid. They whispered of the wall, of a brother grown too great for his cloak, of old tales where bastards rose to strike down true-born kin. Catelyn entered behind them and felt every eye shift, each face a blade. They blame me for his blood, she thought, bitter as winter grapes. Had she not prayed for Jon's exile on the wall? Had she not spurred Ned's guilt into sending the boy away? Now that boy might return a man with an army. Fate knew irony. Robb raised a hand. "Enough. Jon is my brother still. He will not raise sword against me." The Grecian swallow was loud as a drum. "And yet, your grace, he commands a host of free folk near the wall, men who owe no fealty but to him." Robb's fists tightened. "Savages and spearwives are not hosts. They seek safe passage south. Whether Jon leads them or no, winter drives them. The real threat sits the Iron Throne and names us traitors." "Traitors, aye," grunted Meage Mormont. "But the Lannisters bleed slower than bastards." Ser Wendell dabbed his lips with wine-stained cloth. If John marches south with wildlings, White Harbor will panic. Lord Wyman favors peace with Old Town trade. He might bend the knee to King's Landing again. Robb stood. Just that motion stilled the hall. He was taller than most, hair red-brown as a dying fire's last spark, shoulders broad but weighed by sorrow none could measure. "I will treat with my brother," he said, "alone if need be. If he seeks to divide the North, he will find no joy in it. But I cannot meet steel with steel until we have spoken. Blood calls to blood." No lord dared oppose him then. Yet in the warp of the banners overhead, a dozen different wolves, bears, mermen, and flayed men, threads had begun to fray. John rode south from the wall with but two companions. Tormund Giantsbane, still nursing a broken rib and a broken heart for all the free folk left dead in snowdrifts, and Ghost, whose silent footfalls painted no track on new snow. Castle Black grew small behind them, a black tooth against a continent of moonlit white, until even its torchlights were stars lost among stars. Tormund cursed the cold, but John ignored him. He felt as though he walked a dream. Each gust of wind spoke Robb's name. Each shadow in the pines might be a brother in chains come to haul him back. They kept to the King's Road by night, avoiding watchers. At Molestown, a washerwoman offered John a crust of bread and the sign of the old gods. At Queen's Crown, a band of deserters recognized him and fell on their knees. John bid them stand and remember their vows, yet still they watched him ride away with such desperate hope he could scarcely breathe. By the time he reached the last river, he had gathered 20 followers. Men too ragged for banners, too faithful for fear. Each swore to follow Jon Snow not as king, but as brother. Felt like treason cloaked in love. On the 5th night, a rider found them. Satin, cheeks raw, cloak black as regret. "Thorin Smallwood leads 30 brothers after you," Satin warned. Ser Dennis Mallister argued but was overruled. "They mean to drag you back in irons." John bowed his head. "I left them a letter," he murmured. "Forgive me, brothers." But forgiveness did not mend chains. Tormund spat. "Crow fights crow. Southrons laugh. Is madness all you kneel to in this realm?" John mounted again, kite shield across his back, long claw at his hip. "We ride faster," he said. Ghost's red eyes glimmered agreement in the frost. Winterfell's godswood had not known such hush since the day Bran fell. Snow sifted down through bare branches, dusting Robin's small corpses wedged in roots. Robb knelt before the heart tree, palm laid flat over the face's sap-hardened tear. He asked no question. He offered no plea. He simply shared his heartbeat, letting it echo through time's slow rings until the wood itself seemed to pulse. Behind him a presence moved, quiet as snowfall, heavy as iron. "Brother," John said. Robb rose, snow sliding from his black steel pauldrons. His breath caught in a ragged plume. They stood a sword's length apart, eyes locked. Both had changed. Robb's face bore new scars, mouth chiseled stern. John's carried the lean edge of endless watchfulness, a killer's calm. Yet beneath these changes lay the ghost of two boys who had raced up towers and sworn secrets beneath for needles. Neither smiled. "The wall lies behind me," John said at last, voice low, nearly lost among sighing branches. "I came to speak, nothing more." "And I to listen," Robb answered, though his hand brushed the dagger at his waist. Not in threat, but in memory of old training. John glanced at the weirwood. "Father's gods witness us. Let us not lie." "No," Robb agreed. "Let us not." John unslung his sword and set it point down in snow. "I swore no crown, no kingdom, but the North bleeds, Robb. Men die for your dream, and for mine." Robb's jaw worked as if grinding bones. "Your dream, John?" "A North unbroken, unruled by Southrons, uncut by greed, yet also a North that keeps faith with ancient laws, with children at hearths, with peace where it can be found." John's eyes flicked to Robb's steel crown. "You would be king of that North. I would be its shield." Robb's breath stilled. Shield or rival? Ghost stepped from shadow, for white flame under moon bronze. Robb's own direwolf snarled from the edge of the clearing. Brother against brother, mirror fangs. Jon's voice cracked. If I wished your throne, I should have come at night with 1,000 free folk screaming your name in fear. But I came with none but truth. And the watch? Robb asked. Your vows. I remain sworn. Yet the watch cannot guard mankind when mankind tears itself apart. Jon took a slow breath. Release the North, Robb. Let it breathe. Parley with Stannis. Bend knee if need be. Demand his banners against Lannister gold. But do not march our people into graves for pride. Robb's eyes flared.
Bride?
Did father die for pride? Did gray men hang at the twins for pride? The Lannisters will never loose their claws. The only answer is a crown. Jon shook his head. A crown forged of dead kinsmen weighs heavier than iron. Silence grew vast and bitter. Snowflakes drifted between them like falling petals from a killing frost. At last Robb's voice thawed to a whisper. If I yield now, I betray every man who raised sword beside me. Their ghosts will haunt these halls forever. And if you do not, Jon answered, I must oppose you, not for vengeance, for the living who will follow me rather than see winter keep devour spring. Robb's shoulders slumped under invisible armor. So it must be war. Tears burned behind Jon's eyes, unseen. Brother against brother. But there may yet be time. Tomorrow at dawn I ride for Moat Cailin. Meet me there within 8 days' sun. Let us treat again, beneath banners of truce. Let our captain speak. Our men share bread. Our wolves sniff the same wind. If then we choose blades, at least we shall know we did all we could to keep winter from our hearts. Robb looked to the heart tree. Sap glistened red, like blood that never clotted. He nodded once, a king's nod, irrevocable. 8 days. Moat Cailin. Jon retrieved Longclaw. As he turned away, Robb said, Whatever comes, you are my brother. And you mine, Jon replied, though his voice broke on the words. He disappeared into the trees, ghost a pale shadow at his heel. Robb remained, alone with gods and ghosts, until dawn painted the snow scarlet. The next 8 days changed the face of the north. From White Harbor sailed 3 Manderley cogs flying half-mast wolves. From Deepwood came Lady Asha with 2 galleys of Ironborn who had bent knee after Stannis' justice. From Barrowton limped dusty riders bearing the broken sword banner of House Dustin. Each house, each captain, each Sellsword band stood at a crossroads none could name yet all could feel. Follow Robb's dream of a free north or Jon's plea for fragile unity. Moat Cailin became a camp of tents stitched from mismatched cloth. Green fry silk by dun umber canvas, black nights watch leathers by rainbow Tyrell stripes stolen at the stony September fires burned all night, but the cold devoured every spark. Men spoke little. They watched the road like condemned souls awaiting a headsman who might yet be merciful. Some carved talismans of weirwood, some sharpened pikes, some drank until dawn. In the marsh beyond the causeway, frogs croaked funeral dirges. Jon arrived on the 7th dusk, bannerless. Ghost preceded him, and for a heartbeat men mistook the dire wolf for some pale demon born of snow. Whispers followed Jon through camp. Oathbreaker, Wildling King, Snow the Crow, Lord of the Fallen Wall. He acknowledged none. His eyes sought only Robb's tent, where a wolf's head wrought of beaten bronze glimmered above the flap. Robb emerged in mail and wolf pelt cloak. They faced each other in torchlight. Around them men held breath so long the night seemed to pause its turning. I kept my word, Jon said. As will I. Robb gestured to a round table under ranks of guttering torches. 2 chairs sat opposite, fur-lined, empty. Robb took one. Jon sat the other. Ghost lay between, jaw on paws. Gray wind paced beyond, restless. The captains ringed them at a respectful distance. Great John Umber, Meege Mormont, Wyman Manderley, Galbart Glover, Tormund Giantsbane huffing like a bear. On Jon's side Ser Dennis Mallister had ridden, defying the Watch Council. Maester Eamon perched owl-like in a litter, and Satin held a lantern high. Robb spoke first. Stannis offers me lordship under his crown if I kneel and grant the North to him once more. He grants me the title Warden of the North, promises justice for father, marriages for my sisters, gold for the rebuild of Winterfell. But I would be a vassal in all but name. Jon folded hands. Stannis is what he is. Hard stone, can build walls or break skulls. Yet if walls keep winter out, skulls mend eventually. A murmur of uneasy laughter rippled. Robb's fingers drummed. He would also pardon you, commander of the wall still, free to range, honored guest at his court. In exchange, he demands your suppression of wildlings south of the gift. Jon's eyes narrowed. And their lives? Their dead children beneath the snow? No crown can wash that blood. I know. Robb leaned forward, voice gentler. But winter approaches. Stores run thin. How do we feed thousands of free folk? Where do they settle? Bolton lands lie poisoned by treachery, Carhold burned, Hornwood gutted. The north is wide, but winter is wider. Jon exhaled, saw his breath swirl like a hanged man twisting. We teach them to farm, to hunt in our woods with respect, to serve in our levees. Give them miles no southerner wants, Flint's finger, the rills. They may repay in blood when White Walkers march again. The captain stirred, crosses of fear and scorn. Robb weighed Jon's face. You believe the Walkers will return? Jon nodded. Robb looked away as if into fire. Very well. Suppose I accept free folk under Northern Banner, and I kneel to Stannis for alliance. What do we gain? Jon's answer was a whisper. Time, food, peace enough to mend roofs before snow. Robb closed his eyes. Peace forged by bending knee. Peace worth any posture, Jon said. Except one, Robb murmured, opening his eyes, steel gray wet, the posture of broken kingship. If I kneel, I break my word to men who bled for me. Jon's hand drifted to Longclaw's pommel. Then we duel. Your honor proven. My faith tested. Winner decides. Gasps. Even ghosts seemed to shiver. Robb laughed once. A sound like ice cracking on thawing river. Brother, I can't. I can. Jon cut, voice iron. Dawn. The causeway. He stood. Bloodless duel, wooden practice blades. First to yield. Robb stared, color leaving his cheeks. If I win, you are king. I and all free folk bend knee or return beyond the wall. And if you win, Stannis alliance, free folk settlement, northern truce. Robb's throat bobbed. Done. Thus was doom set in motion. Night before duel wound itself into the hearts of every tent. Some prayed. Some sharpened steel, though none would be drawn. Catelyn sat in a corner of the command tent, knitting a cloak that would never warm the chill inside her. Maester Aemon read by candle until the flame failed and he sat deaf to night's hush. Gray wind howled a song no man translated. Ghost answered. Jon slept little. He dreamed of Winterfell's crypts, of Ned's voice telling him that honor was not the road but the wheel upon which roads were drawn. He woke before moonset, walked barefooted into the marsh and knelt in mud. The chill seeped through bone until he felt nothing, only the beating of his heart like a drum for war he wished no part of. Robb too found no rest. He sat with his sword laid flat across his knees, polishing the steel though practiced blades waited. In the reflection he saw his father's eyes, not dead, only watching. He whispered, "Guide him, guide me." The sword answered with silence the color of sunrise. Dawn's first blush found two men atop the causeway, boots planted on slick stone. Mist coiled off the barrow reeds. Sun's disk hovered pale as bone. Soldiers lined either flank in hushed rows. Crows gathered on broken towers. Wooden tourney swords were offered. Jon hefted his, testing balance. Robb's grip was surer, knuckles whitening. A horn sounded. They circled. No words now, words had done their work. Jon moved like a shadow under pine, weight low, eyes on shoulders. Robb advanced with a commander's patience, guard high. The first clash echoed down the ancient stones. A sharp clap, splinters flying. Jon slid inside Robb's swing, tapped his brother's ribs. Robb retreated, stance reset. Mist swallowed their legs. They moved half-seen, phantoms of two lives. Strike, Parry, bind, release would cracking like frozen branches. Jon's breath rasped. Robb's hair stuck to sweat. Minutes stretched, each heartbeat counted by 100 watchers. The duel flowed beyond contest, becoming dialogue. Childhood rivalries, shared secrets, tears for Ned, for Bran, for Arya lost somewhere unknown. Robb feinted left, pivoted, brought blade down in a sweeping arc. Jon crossed high guard, caught it, but the force numbed his arm. He stumbled. Robb pressed, heel slipping on moss. Jon twisted, swept Robb's legs, sent him crashing. Yet Robb rolled, sprang, lashed outward, broadside blow that rang Jon's skull like iron. Both stepped back, panting. Blood trickled from Jon's ear, Robb's lip split. Wooden blades frayed. Jon tasted salt, snow, and despair. He saw Robb's eyes. Not rage, not triumph, but heartbreak. He lowered his sword. Robb mirrored him. They stood motionless, while sun climbed a single spear length above horizon. Around them breaths held. Ghost whined. Gray wind growled soft. Jon's voice was a croak. Enough. No crown is worth our mother's tears. Robb's shoulders shook. His sword dropped, clattering. He knelt upon the stones speckled with their mingled blood. Jon knelt opposite. Two brothers bowed not to each other but to the thing they both had almost slain, love. Cheers did not erupt. Instead silence blossomed, broken only when Tormund exhaled a slow curse. Maester Aemon wept sightless tears. Robb rose and turned to the captains. "I will bend knee," he said, "but not to Stannis, nor Joffrey, nor any Southron scion. I bend it to the north, its people, its future. I will be no king but Lord Protector until such day winter ends and we may choose freely. Jon Snow shall serve as warden of the wall and the gift. Free folk will settle under northern law, answer to their own chieftains yet pay tithe and aid in war." A great murmur swelled. Protest, relief, confusion. Jon stepped beside him. "And I swear, by ice and fire, that no wildling spear will threaten northern child, nor night's watch oath be broken again for politics. We stand together or we fall." In that instant, beneath a pale sun and a sky full of crows, the north breathed. Men dropped weapons. Women sobbed. Even the marsh seemed to exhale mist in gentle coils. Yet far away, down the King's Road, ravens already flew. The Iron Throne would not accept such peace. And in the deep white of the true north, something colder than winter stirred, tasting unity like warm blood. The brothers clasped forearms. "There will be battles yet," Robb whispered. Jon nodded. "But not today." Evening fell upon Moat Cailin like a benediction. Fires sprang up again, cooking fires, not funeral pyres. Songs began, tentative, half-remembered lullabies of the Wolflands. Wildlings shared sour goat's milk with Karstark men. Manderly stewards passed honeyed bread to Night's Watch brothers. The world had not changed, but hearts had inched. Catelyn found her sons upon an ancient slab of black basalt, watching stars appear. Robb held a bandage to Jon's brow. Jon teased him for sloppy knots. They looked up when she approached. No words were needed. She embraced them both, tears soaking fur. Ghost nuzzled her hand. Grey Wind lay his great head in her lap, sighing like wind through memory. Above, constellations wheeled. The sword, the crown, the direwolf. Below, men who once planned slaughter spoke of tomorrow's harvest. Between, two brothers dreamed of a north that might survive the winter, together. And somewhere beyond sight, ice cracked far to the north, great sheets splitting as if a giant had breathed upon them. The sound was faint, lost under laughter and song, but it echoed nonetheless, heralding storms neither crown nor truce could tame. Yet for one night, hope burned, small, steady, defiant, like a candle set in the mouth of the heart tree, refusing to go out. Night settled over Moat Cailin as a hush more profound than any prayer fell upon the marshes. The tents that hours earlier had rung with cautious laughter now glimmered like scattered embers beneath an overcast sky, each lamp a fragile hope sulking against the wind. Jon Snow walked the perimeter alone. Armor shed, cloak drawn tight. He let the smells of peat and damp will remind him that victories bought with mercy were victories unfinished. Reprieve, not rest, that was all the gods had granted. Somewhere behind him Tormund's rolling baritone lulled watchfires to drowsy silence, telling half the camp how he slew a giant with nothing but a soup ladle. Before dawn that same tale would claim the ladle was made of dragon bone. Jon smiled despite himself, then sobered. The free folk needed stories tonight. Anything to drown the ache of old grudges held in uneasy check beside northern steel. At the causeway barricade Jon paused to watch ghost mist crawl over the roadstones. Far out in the reeds a wolf howled. Neither ghost nor gray wind, but a third voice, wild and mournful. The north answered its own call, as if the land sought language for what had begun here. He thought of his father, of Hullen and Farlan, of Ser Roderick's severed head spitted on a Bolton rampart. Could the dead forgive this fragile peace? Could the living defend it? Jon tugged his glove tighter and resumed his patrol, mind racing faster than any raven. A sudden quiet footfall startled him. Robb approached, hair tousled and eyes shadowed from too little sleep. He had shed crown and mantle for a plain wool jerkin, yet nothing could hide the heaviness of command. For a long heartbeat they stood together in silence while torches guttered around them. "They say the marsh lights are ghosts," Robb murmured, nodding to pale green flickers dancing over distant pools. "Or swamp gas," Jon replied. "Let them be ghosts tonight," Robb sighed. "Perhaps they're happier than we are." Jon studied his brother's face, the bruised purple-black along Robb's jaw, the cracked lip. Wounds mattered little against what loomed. "We have sent birds," Jon said. "Stannis will know within a fortnight. With luck, he approves." "Stannis's approval may cost us more than denial," Robb answered. "But it is a cost I will pay if it spares Winterfell another graveyard." He glanced back toward camp. The Lords fret. Manderly fears southern trade collapse. The Great Jon drinks to hide his fury that there was no proper duel of steel. Meage Mormont wants the Boltons flayed for treachery. Irony lost on no one. And Asha Greyjoy whispers that ironborn oaths are like waves, held only until the next tide. Jon caught a faint grin at that last remark. "And what does King Robb think?" Robb's grin faded. "King, I set the crown aside, yet its shadow clings. They will call me Oathbreaker, some of them. Others will follow me only so long as Lannister gold remains south of the neck." He exhaled white steam. "What I think is simple. If we do not close ranks now, the others will find more corpses than living when they breach the wall again." Jon nodded. "Aemon believes the cold winds will rise by year's end. We must prepare." Robb's hand settled on Jon's shoulder, tentative. "Walk with me, brother. There is more." They passed sentries saluting with spear butts, crossed the moat's rotten plank bridge, and ducked into a half-collapsed tower where a single lantern swung from a rusted hook. Inside, parchment maps lay atop overturned kegs. Gray wind dozed in the corner. The dire wolf lifted one eyelid as Jon entered, then slept again. Robb unrolled a fresh raven scroll. "Dispatch from Deepwood Motte. Asha writes that cell sails bearing Lannister Crimson and Myrish Sunburst docked at 10 Towers. 3 war galleys. Lady Glover fears an ironborn rebellion financed by Casterly Rock." He tapped the parchment. "If that is true, Tywin means to open a second front along the western coast, force us to divide." "Do we trust ironborn rumors?" Jon asked. "Trust?" Robb laughed softly. "Trust shattered the day Theon sacked Winterfell, but overlook them at peril. If Lannister fleets raid Deepwood or Bear Island, our western defenses crumble." He folded the parchment with weary precision. "Asha suggests recalling her ironborn host to defend their isles. That strips me of 300 veterans." His voice cracked. "But perhaps we have no choice." Jon leaned against the crumbling wall, eyes narrowing. "If Ironborn abandon our cause, we bolster the rills. Tallheart men know those shores, and free folk longships outsprint any Lannister galley. Some raiders would sail for us." Robb frowned, the notion clearly novel. Wildlings at sea? Many were crabbers, seal hunters, whalers. They master ironwood boats lighter than pine. Promise them land and trade. They'll fight. Jon crossed arms. Of course, northern lords may balk. A crooked smile touched Robb's mouth. Lords balk at dawn and supper both. Let them. Then he sobered. I will send riders north to Carhold and White Harbor. If Lord Wyman sees we stand not alone, he might release a levy of spearmen. Jon folded his hands. And the Boltons? Robb's gaze hardened like river ice. Roose festers in Harrenhal under Lannister watch. But Ramsay commands the dread fort. Rumor says he tortures his own men to keep the rest afraid. We have ravens detailing his crimes. Signed by Master-at-Arms Harwood Stout. He swallowed. If we deny Boltons their flayed men, we must remove Ramsay. Quietly, swiftly, finally. An arrow in the dark, Jon murmured. My mother would beg mercy. I cannot. Robb's shoulders sagged. I hate that mercy looks like weakness in war. Mercy is never weakness, Jon answered, though he heard Maester Aemon's voice beneath his own. But justice can be swift. Robb lifted his head, resolve forging anew. I'll send Meege Mormont and Galbart Glover east with 100 silent blades. We strike the dread fort before Ramsay routes south. Flayed men do not rally armies. Jon exhaled, tension uncoiling. Good. Meanwhile, I ride north at first light. The watch must prepare for winter, and the free folk need escort through the gift. His eyes gleamed. I'll bring back a detachment, maybe 200 veterans. Marshal them at Queen's Crown, drill them, feed them. And when Stannis arrives? Robb asked. Then he finds a North already united, Jon replied. He may bristle, but he will honor strength. Robb clasped Jon's forearm. Ride safely, and, brother, thank you. Jon squeezed back, wordless. Gray wind lifted his head to huff a breath as they parted. Dawn unfurled bruised rows across the horizon when Jon assembled his column outside Moat Caelin's gate. A lean mix of black cloaks, free folk leather patches, and a scattering of northern volunteers formed a ragged arrow pointed toward the King's Road. Satin held the Night's Watch banner, a field sable with snowy peaks, though he carried it rolled tight against spying eyes. Beside him Tormund straddled a shaggy Garen, beard glistening with frost and something suspiciously like gravy. Move like we stole the dawn, Tormund barked, voice echoing. No pissing on stones till midday. Jon mounted a rangy dun gelding, ghost pacing at his stirrup. His glance back at Moat Cailin found Robb standing alone atop the gatehouse, cloak snapping. They held eyes only a moment, and Jon felt the bittersweet sting of parting all Starks must know. He raised a hand. Robb mirrored. Then the column creaked into motion, hoofs clopping on ancient stones drowned beneath knee-deep bog centuries past. They advanced north under thin sun. Marsh became heath, heath yielded to pine, and by nightfall the King's Road climbed onto the ridge above Queen's Crown. Jon ordered camp. Fires sparked, stews simmered. He walked the circle speaking names, encouraging a Snow, a Hornwood lad, a spear wife called Willow. These were no lord's host but a tapestry of North reborn. Satin approached quietly. A rider arrived, Lord Commander. Message sealed black wax. Jon slit the seal. The parchment bore Maester Aemon's fine hand. Ranged scouts at Shadow Tower saw shadows in the snow. White creatures, silent. We hold, but numbers unknown. Gods watch over you, Aemon. The chill that pricked Jon's spine owed nothing to the night air. The others danced again beyond the wall. He folded the message, slipped it beneath his jerkin, and searched the dark forest line where owls whispered secrets men had forgotten. At Winterfell, Catelyn Stark moved through memories as ghosts moved through snow. She found distance in daily tasks, distributing rations, hearing disputes over arrow fletching, visiting the weaver's workshop where girls spun rough wool into blankets faster than winter fell. Yet each corridor echoed younger laughter. Arya leaping from baluster to baluster, Sansa humming southern ballads. Grief was an old blanket itself. Heavy, warm, impossible to cast off. In the solar one night she found Talisa's last letter to Robb, half-finished, sealed with wax never melted. My love, the babe kicks each dawn when birds stir. Caitlin pressed the letter to her chest until tears stained the parchment. For Talisa, for Ned, for Bran lost somewhere along the broken fates. Then she set it gently among Ned's ledgers. The world needed ledgers more than tears, and she had learned to barter grief for duty. When Maester Luwin shuffled in, Caitlin already held ink and quill. Prepare ravens to White Harbor, Torrance Square, and the twins, she told him. The twins, my lady? Luwin blinked. Yes. Her voice was iron-shaved thin. Lord Walder must choose. Robb's forgiveness or the Lannisters' coin. Either way, we must know. Luwin bowed. The ravens would fly. Whether Walder Frey answered honorably lay beyond wings. 2 days south of the winter town, Meege Mormont and Galbart Glover led 97 riders east along the White Knife, cloaked in pine shadows. Bears painted on shields tucked beneath fur. Their mission forbade banners. Snowmelt swelled the river, muffling hoofbeats. Ahead, the Dreadfort's lands sprawled like old scars across the hills. Fields unharvested, crofts burned, scarecrows crucified as grisly warnings. Meege's knuckles whitened. He flays his own, she muttered. But tonight we peel the leech from the north. At dusk, scouts returned with word. Ramsay Bolton hunted with 20 hounds and a score of horsemen near Barrowland's edge, seeking runaways from his kennels. Perfect isolation. Glover grinned savage. Night is our cloak. They struck after moonrise. Hounds howled, cut short by crossbow quarrels. Ramsay's riders spun into chaos, slowed by ale and arrogance. Meege herself swung the mace that crushed the bastard's collarbone. 3 furious blows more and his helm caved. Yet as blood pooled black in starlight, they found the face beneath was not Ramsay at all but a groom wearing the Lord's sable cloak. Fury rippled through the company. A decoy Bolton cunning. Glover's voice grated. Then the real viper coils in his den. We march on the Dreadfort before dawn. Meege hesitated. 90 riders against castle walls? Yet hesitation cost more blood than boldness. She signaled forward. When John's column reached the gift, ravens spiraled overhead like dark augury. They found the holdfasts deserted. Small folk had fled south, leaving winter wheat half-reaped. At Queen's Crown the watchtower still smoldered, black streaks along pale stone. Free folk slaughter or worse. John dispatched pairs to scout each hamlet. They returned with stories of burned barns, baby footprints in snow, no bodies. John feared raids by Night's Watch deserters. Satin feared Whites. The third night a scream split the camp. John sprinted to find Willow the spearwife kneeling by a slain ox. Blood scrawled a pattern across the snow, spiral of severed hooves encircling the carcass. John's stomach clenched. He had seen such shapes beyond the wall. The others marked their passage with art of flesh and ice. He called a council round the largest fire. We travel light and quick, he ordered. No more fires after moonrise. Double sentries. Ghost ranges half a mile. When he returns, we move again. Faces grim, the company obeyed. As stars wheeled overhead, John found sleep in glimpses. Visions of blue eyes in darkness. A crown of black ice. Robb screaming wordless across an endless frozen field. He woke shivering, clutching Long Claw, eyes burning with the certainty that the wall would soon be only a memory. Southward, in the Red Keep's solar-washed gold by evening sun, Queen Cersei Lannister sipped Myrish sweet wine while Maester Pycelle droned casualty tallies from the Riverlands. She hummed beneath her breath, some tune sung by a Braavosi minstrel at Joffrey's last name day, but her eyes fixed on Lord Varys, who stood placid as a painted doll beside the hearth. When Pycelle finished, Cersei waved him out. "Your little bird's chirp of northern treachery," she purred at Varys. "Tell me, has the bastard Snow raised a host?" The eunuch twinkled sorrow. "Whispers say Jon Snow met his brother upon Moat Cailin stones. But instead of swords they chose words, and those words mended a realm. Fledgling peace, your grace." "Peace," Cersei laughed, throat tight. "Stags rutting with dire wolves under snow? I think not. Tywin will crush them." She strolled to the tower window where black sails dotted the Blackwater Bay, captured Volantene corsairs now sworn to Lannister coin. Father's fleets sail north to 10 towers. 6 more days and Deepwood burns. The Ironborn will spit all Stark flags into the sea. Varys bowed. Wise strategy. Yet rumor says Stannis Baratheon marches 2,000 at least to Eastwatch by the sea, hoping to win the Night's Watch. Should he align with these reunited Starks? Every rumor births 3 more, Cersei snapped. Stannis is a dead man walking. Let him freeze. She turned away, gown rustling like dry leaves. Focus on King's Landing. We have enough vipers inside these walls. Varys inclined his bald head. Behind the smile, the spider counted fangs. At Castle Black, Ser Thorin Smallwood returned with 20 black brothers, battered and blood-caked. They told of an ambush near Long Barrow. White shadows with eyes like frozen moon murdered half their number. Corpses rose again before torches took them. Lord Commander Bowen Marsh rallied garrison and barred every gate. Yet the wall groaned each dusk, knuckles of ice fracturing with subterranean thunder. Aemon counseled caution. Marsh choked on pride, brandishing writs of discipline for desertion. All the while the brothers' eyes drifted north where auroras flickered green across violent skies. When ravens returned from Queen's Crown bearing Jon's orders, Marsh crushed them in his fist. The traitor will hang, he vowed. But in the rookery Maester Aemon penned one more letter, addressed nowhere and everywhere. The long night wakens. Old grievances must sleep, or we all shall. He tied it to the leg of his oldest raven, a crusty white bird named Snow, and freed him into starlight. Where the bird flew, none would know until dawn. Meege Mormont's force reached the Dreadfort's outer palisade under veiled moon. They expected torches flaring, crossbow bolts whistling. Instead they found gates yawning, guard towers empty. The bears shared uneasy glances. Glover signaled forward. They crossed the threshold into a courtyard littered with frost-stiff corpses. Bolton men flayed and hung by ankles, crimson rags fluttering. The flayed man's sigil had turned upon itself. Meege dismounted before the great hall. Doors gaped, hinges torn. Inside, the long tables were overturned, wine pooled black, and at the dais Ramsay Bolton sprawled across his father's high seat. Eyes gouged, chest a ruin of bite marks. On the walls, neat letters spelled a message in dried blood. Our skin is ours. The North remembers. Glover spat. Karstark vengeance? Or wildlings? Meege shook her head, jaw tight. This reeks of Northmen who paid Ramsay's coin and learned the cost. She strode forward, ripped the wolf's head helm from Ramsay's corpse, and tossed it to the hearth. The iron clanged like a cracked bell. Send ravens. The bastard of Bolton is dead. Tell every holdfast. No one flays another Northman again. Knights sheathed swords and used. Justice sometimes needed no stroke, only the terror of consequence fulfilled. Jon's vanguard reached Castle Black during a blizzard that roared like dragons in the chimneys. Snowflakes big as moths whirled through tattered gates. Torches flared gutters of orange. Brothers on ramparts watched the approaching column with arrows knocked. At their head Ser Thorin shouted, "Hold! None enters by order of the Lord Commander." Jon rode forward, hood back, ghost at heel. "By whose order?" he called above the gale. "Bowen Marsh is not elected." Thorin's eyes flashed. "The brothers gathered and chose him after you deserted." "Deserted?" Jon dismounted, letting the blizzard cloak his calm. "I rode on Night's Watch duty, to parley with the North, secure aid, bring recruits." Thorin sneered. "You parleyed with a king. I parleyed with my brother to prevent northern war. Brothers of the Watch died beyond the wall for less." Jon's glove lifted. Behind him 24 spears lowered. "We are not foes, Thorin. The others march. Open these gates or doom us all." Wind howled. Thorin hesitated, eyes darting to the haunted forest. Then from atop the wall came a horn's single note, low, resigned. Marsh appeared waving, his cheeks streaked with tears. "Let him in," the steward commander croaked. "Let them all in. Gods help us, we need every sword." The portcullis creaked up. Jon led his company through, and for a moment the storm itself seemed to pause, as if the wall drew breath. Inside, chaos reigned. Black brothers fouled with soot scurried to patch cracks in the curtain wall. Ravens flapped loose. Jon barked orders. Tormund's free folk hauled stone. Satin sprinted for the rookery with Eamon's letters. Hours later, warm in the common hall, Jon faced Bowen Marsh across a bare table. "Send ravens south," Jon said. "To Winterfell, to White Harbor, even to Stannis if he's reached Eastwatch. Tell them the dead walk again. Tell them Moat Cailin stands united." Marsh nodded, shame etched deep. "I wronged you. Wrong me tomorrow," Jon answered. "If we live that long." In 10 Towers, Lady Glover met Tywin's sellsails at the quay, bristling Lysine men draped in crimson. Yet before a single sword left scabbard, a roar thundered from the sea. Iron-born longships, outriggers of black hull and blacker sails, swarmed like hornets. At their head sailed a sleek vessel bearing a white direwolf on a field of midnight. Asha Greyjoy stood at the prow, wind-whipped and laughing. She hailed the sellsail captain in fluid Myrish. "Lord of Casterly Rock forgot these waters are ours. Go home, dog of lions." Her reavers lined decks with bows drawn. Facing sudden ambush, the sellsails withdrew oarlocks and rowed out, unwilling to die for southern coin. Asha jumped ashore, clasped Lady Glover's hand. "Tell your Wolf King the Kraken keeps his seas, for now." Lady Glover smiled grimly. The North's coast held. Robb received word of Bolton's downfall on the same day a raven delivered Jon's message from the wall. Joy slammed against dread in his chest until he almost staggered. Ramsay dead, one plague ended. But the others moved, and Jon begged aid. Robb convened council in the Great Hall. "My brother calls banners," he announced. "Not for crown, but for life. 600 men ride by dawn for Castle Black. The remainder hold Winterfell against whatever storms the South may send." He looked at each lord and lady, daring defiance. There was none. Catelyn approached when the hall emptied. 600, she whispered. "Can Winterfell spare so many?" Robb clasped her hands. "It must. Mother, this war is not swords and lions now. It is dead things in snow. Jon will hold the wall, but if it falls, Winterfell stands next." She shivered despite hearthfires blazing. "Then I will ride with you." "Mother, I stitched banners before you were born," Catelyn said. "I buried Brandon's and Lyanna's and Ned. I will not wait here to bury sons." Her voice faltered, but her gaze remained steel. Robb bowed his head. "Then we ride together." Preparations commenced. Warhorses shod with ironclad call. Smiths worked through night. Supplies dwindling were packed nonetheless. Salt pork, dried lentils, barley sacks. Bran's wolves, Summer and Shaggy Dog, howled from the godswood, uneasy, as if sensing the end of things. Jon's first night back on the wall, he walked the icy rampart, torch guttering. Satin followed, cloak snapping. Southward the forest lay black beneath broken moon. Northward an endless snowfield stretched, pale as a corpse's cheek. In that pallor Jon saw shapes, some real, some memory, until all merged. He paused at the edge of the long drop into nothing. Satin's voice shook. "Do you think they'll come tonight?" "They're always coming," Jon whispered. "The wall keeps them honest." Below, beyond the Ringfort ruins, Ghost prowled. His white fur glowed and his eyes blazed crimson. Jon watched his direwolf and felt the ancient pact between man and beast tighten like woven sinew. The Starks and their wolves, bound to fight the darkness since the first men carved faces in trees. Thunder rolled far off, dull, prolonged. Not thunder, something heavier. Jon knew that sound, a glacier's calving roar. He closed his eyes, felt the world tilt. The ice itself was breaking. He turned to Satin. "Ready every signal flare. When the sky bleeds green again, we send them up." Satin nodded, sprinting away. Jon looked north once more. A lone snowflake drifted onto his glove. Translucent, perfect. He watched it melt under his body's warmth. So fragile, he thought, Yet gather enough and you bury kingdoms. Downriver, at Moat Cailin, new recruits arrived each day. Spearmen from the rills, Karstark archers under banners of black sunbursts newly amended with white wolf's head in place of flayed man. Even a few neck crannogmen paddling reed boats through flooded causeways. Lady Meege Mormont rode in at dusk bearing Ramsay's wolf-head helm on a spear. She planted it before the gate, spittle hissing on the iron. Inside the great tower Yon Royce, newly arrived from Gulltown with 30 airy riders, met Caitlin. The bronze giant bowed. Lady Lisa sees storm clouds gathering. House Arryn stands wary but not idle. If the dead walk, the Vale remembers its first duty, to men, not crowns. Caitlin thanked him, tears bright, allies sprung like crocuses through frost. If only seeds of hope grew faster than winter. Later she wandered the courtyard and found a shape crouched at the king's map table. Sansa Stark, wan but taller now, bent over a parchment, tracing supply lines from White Harbor to Castle Black. She looked up. "Mother," Sansa murmured, "I've never planned a march before." Her smile trembled. Septa Mordain taught sums, but not how many oats a horse eats. Caitlin embraced her daughter, inhaling the scent of cedar soap and candle smoke. "We learn what we must," she whispered. "Tell me what you need." Sansa swallowed, steel beneath softness. "Quills, ink, and faith, I suppose." "You have both," Caitlin said. In the depths of the haunted forest, 3 Night's Watch scouts found a circle of blackened trees surrounding a mound of fresh earth. They dug despite terror until their shovels hit painted iron, the hilt of a great sword, Valyrian steel, etched with herons. They knew whose sword it was, Ser Corran Hay, lost last month. Yet the grave held no body, only the sword and a letter bound in human sinew. "We are Legion. We are Snow's haunt. We are the cold within your bones." The scouts fled, leaving the sword. Behind them the mound stirred, as though something beneath tested its strength against the soil. At Castle Black, horns wailed thrice on the 15th night after Jon's return. Blue torches bloomed along the switchback stairs. Jon roused from fitful half-sleep, armor buckled before the second blast faded. On the wall's crest, snow whipped horizontal in gale who married ice to night. Ghosts snarled, hackles ridged. Far below, ghost light shimmered along the tree line. An army of the dead, ranks upon ranks, eyes shimmering blue. At their center moved towering shapes, half again a man's height, armored in ice. Wind carried a sound like crackling glass fused with distant children's laughter. Jon's breath froze on his mustache. Marsh stood beside him, face waxen. "We are few," the steward mouthed. "Yet we stand," Jon answered, drawing long claw. He lifted arm high. Flare staff blazed green into cloud-swollen sky. Then 3 more soared from towers east and west. Green light rippled across snow like emerald fire. The others slowed, heads tilting as if wary of sorcery. An eerie hush fell. Moments later, horns to the south echoed. Once, twice, then a riotous chorus. Jon scanned darkness beyond the lights and saw torches bobbing, hundreds, approaching on the King's Road. Wolves howled unmistakably. The Stark host had come. Bowstrings twanged. Arrows hissed into the night.
Flaming pitch arcs met icy spears.
Where Valyrian steel arrowheads struck whites, they burst in shards of frost. Where common iron hit, the dead merely staggered. Brothers cursed, reloaded. On the ground outside the wall, Robb Stark directed cavalry lines wheeling torchlit like dragonflies. Gray wind lunged through snowdrifts to hamstring undead elk, jaws steaming. Manderly crossbowmen loosed quarrels dipped in dragonglass resin. Jon had sent recipes south days earlier. Wherever those darts found bone, whites shattered. Behind them, Caitlin oversaw camp surgeons binding the living. Sansa sounded horns in rhythmic patterns signaling flank shifts, her pale face crowned by falling snowflakes. But the others were patient. They pressed from 3 sides, forcing brothers back along the rampart. One White Walker leapt atop a spiked parapet, ice sword singing as it met a castle-forged axe. The axe burst to glittering fragments. The walker advanced, expressionless. Jon met it, Longclaw's Valyrian edge kissing the ice blade. Sparks green-white flared when they clashed. Jon felt his arm numb from the contact, yet he shoved hard. The walker's sword cracked, then exploded in a mist of vapor. Jon swung again, cleaving the creature diagonally. Shards evaporated before they touched stone. A cheer rose, brief, desperate. For every walker felled, 10 wights clambered upward on rope ladders of frozen sinew. The night stretched into nightmare. Steel screaming, flesh ripping, ghosts of breath mixing with smoke and ghastly blue glow. Near hour of the wolf, the tide shifted. Wildling raiders in bear fur cloaks arrived from the east, led by the spearwife Willow. They came howling songs of the Ven, brandishing obsidian spears. Free folk joined watch brothers shoulder to shoulder, thrusting black glass into icy hearts. Unity forged in roar and blood. Dawn's gray smudge bled across horizon before the walkers retreated, wind swirling behind their silent withdrawal. Wights collapsed where they stood, limbs twitching, as if marionette strings severed. Snow settled again. Exhausted cheers rose along the wall. Jon leaned on Longclaw, chest heaving. Marsh wept openly beside him. Below, Robb fired red flares to signal end. Wolves bade triumph to sun still hidden behind leaden cloud. Yet Jon felt none of triumph. His gaze fixed north, where a figure on a pale horse observed from a ridge, a kingly walker, helm crowned with icicles, cloak of hoarfrost trailing. It lifted one arm, and new clouds gathered, swirling violet where dawn should have warmed blue. Jon met its eye fire even over that distance. Promise of future war burned there. He turned away only when Ghost nuzzled his hand. "Not yet," Jon whispered, "but soon." Inside Castle Black's infirmary, Robb's cloak steamed near the hearth as a healer stitched a gash across his bicep. Jon entered, grime streaking his cheeks like war paint. The brothers locked eyes, grief and gratitude mingling. "You came in time," Jon said. "I was late," Robb sighed. "Count the dead." "Too many," Jon agreed. He pulled a stool. "But not all." Caitlin appeared from behind a screen, smearing poultice on her palms. "We lost 47, she reported, but over 100 saved." Robb exhaled. "You make hope sound like numbers, Mother." "Numbers feed hope," she answered. Silence settled. Snow pattered against shutters. Sansa slipped in bearing tin cups of thick broth. Jon accepted one, hands shaking. Robb cleared his throat. "We proved this night that the North United can stand against death itself." Jon nodded. "Yet we tasted only a vagrant band. The true storm is coming. Then we rally all realms, south and north," Robb said. "Lannister, Tyrell, even Martell. If they refuse, we fight without them. But we will not be quiet." Caitlin touched both sons on shoulders. "You will need more than swords. You will need hearts." Sansa spoke softly. "I will right the queens. A woman's plea may travel faster than a king's demand." Robb smiled at his sister. "So you shall." Ghost padded in, lay by gray wind's side. Twin direwolves slept, muzzles touching. Jon set his cup down. "I ride at dusk to Eastwatch. The sea may grant what land denies, and I'll dispatch scouts beyond the wall to learn what stirs." "I ride south," Robb answered, "to White Harbor to call Lord Wyman's fleets, then to Deepwood to end the Lannisters' reach." Caitlin inhaled sharply. "Again you part." "Again," Robb said. He clasped Jon's wrist. "But not in anger." Jon squeezed. "Not in anger." Atop the wall that evening, Jon watched the glowing horizon fade. Robb joined, sling over his bandaged arm, cloak snapping. Below, soldiers kindled funeral pyres. Smoke braided into pinkish clouds. "Do you remember the crypts of Winterfell?" Robb asked. Jon smiled. "We played knights with straw swords. I always made you Ser Dustin, buried with his horse," Robb chuckled. "And you were King Torrin, kneeling to dragonglass swords," Jon replied. Robb's smile waned. "Maybe we should all kneel to the living again." Jon considered. "Kneel with purpose, not fear." "Purpose," Robb echoed. He faced north. Whatever wars come, promise me you'll look after Bran and Rickon when the snows melt. They'll need you more than me. You'll be there, Jon said. Wind howled dim protest. Robb's eyes shone. Promise. Jon hesitated, then nodded. I promise. They embraced, brothers entwined beneath twilight only the wall could know. Ghost looked on. Gray wind lifted muzzle, voiced deep note. From the forests beyond, an answering howl rose, wild, distant, resolute. Night fell anew, but in that night a seed of dawn planted itself unyielding. And though storms gathered, and kings schemed, and death walked on silent feet, two brothers had bound their realms by blood and choice. The north, once fractured, breathed again. One breath, two hearts, countless lives waiting to beat in unison against the long night. The candle of hope still flickered, fragile, threatened, yet burning, burning, burning. The wind that scoured the battlements of Castle Black the morning after the battle tasted of iron and violets. Iron from spilled blood, violets from no flower known to men, only the chill perfume the others left in their wake. Jon Snow breathed it in, let it settle like frost on his tongue, and turned eastward, where the wall curved away into mist. Somewhere beyond that veil lay Eastwatch by the sea, battered, undermanned, and now, if the ravens spoke true, half encircled by drifting ice floes that groaned with strange music when night settled. He descended the switchback steps 2 at a time, boots skidding, mind already charting the journey. 30 black brothers volunteered to ride with him, among them Satin and Ser Dennis Mallister. Tormund would travel too, stubborn as a root wedged in rock. They stood waiting in the courtyard beside shaggy garrons bending heads over oat buckets. Snow fell soft, clinging to shoulders and helms until every man looked carved from bleached pine. Jon swung into his saddle with a grunt, gloved hand closing on Satin's arm. Keep our pace, he said. No fires after dusk. We are fewer than shadows and must pass like them. Satin forced a smile. Shadows don't freeze. They do, Jon muttered. But they're too proud to complain. They left through the east gate as watchmen saluted, passing rows of fresh cairns set for the dead, stark stone mounds without names. Only chipped swords thrust like markers for a garden of memories that would never grow. Gray wind and ghost flanked the riders until the forest swallowed them. Robb stood on the rampart long after they vanished, feeling each hoofbeat fade inside his chest until silence echoed louder than war drums. Later that day the king in all but crown convened a council beneath the king's tower, choosing speed over ceremony. Great Jon Umber arrived swathed in bearskin, still chewing a rind of smoked pork. Lady Mormont smelled of horse and dried blood. Ser Wendell Manderly dabbed his double chin with a lavender-scented kerchief. Sansa sat too, cool poised, parchment unfurled across her lap. The fire crackled between them, sending sparks into rafters blackened by a century of soot. We march south at dawn, Robb began. White Harbor musters for war. Lord Wyman pledges 5,000 spears if we deliver grain through. J.H. Winter. He glanced to Catelyn. She nodded. Wagons already rolled from Winterfell, laden with barley the rills could spare. Deepwood Mott, Meage Mormont asked. Lost yet not fallen, Robb replied. Asha Greyjoy holds but needs men. The Sell-Sail fleet Cersei sent lingers off 10 towers. Afraid now, but still a knife near our ribs. We push them back. The Great Jon belched. And the Riverlands? Freys still yip like lapdogs to Lannisters. Might strike our tail once we leave. Robb's lips thinned. Walder Frey answered none of 3 ravens. We ride too thin to chastise him yet. Pray the old weasel stays in his tower. Sansa's quill scratched. Messages to the Eyrie? She asked. Lord Royce carries them. Robb forced a hopeful tone. If my aunt answers, Arryn knights could seal the neck from Southron incursion.
Ser Wendell shifted.
And Stannis Baratheon? Robb leaned forward, forearms braced on knees. Stannis marches from Eastwatch even now. 2,000 foot, 100 knights, Melisandre of Ass High at his side. He let that name hang, a crimson shadow trailing every rumor. He honors our brotherhood with Jon, but his pride remains. We must meet him before he deems us oathbreakers. Another king, Meej grumbled. Realms crowded with crowns. Robb ignored the jab. Stannis brings wagons of obsidian, axes of bright steel. Without them, we cannot hold the wall a second time. The council agreed for lack of choice. They broke before dusk to gather men. Sansa lingered beside the hearth, rereading her notes as if each line etched fate. Robb touched her shoulder, gentle. You ride with Mother to White Harbor. I know, she said softly. He wanted to say more. How proud Ned would be, how strong she'd grown. But the words stuck. Instead, he squeezed her arm and walked away, cloak trailing sparks that winked out behind him. Days later, Jon's column approached the frozen coast where Eastwatch crouched like a dying bear against the sea. Their path wound between twisted pines bowed under rime. Ghosts scouted ahead, red eyes flicking through gloom. At dusk of the fourth day, they found a refugee caravan, a ragged snake of free folk led by a wiry spearwife bearing a babe at her breast. She hailed Jon by name, though her breath fogged the air like steam from a furnace. Snow of the Wall, she called. The way ahead is hunger and ice. Eastwatch closed its gates. Ships burned in harbor. Docks choked with dead that won't lie still. Jon spurred forward. How many within? 200 brothers, fewer warriors. Lord Stannis sailed south for Queen's Crown 10 suns past. Her haunted eyes slid shoreward. The sea moans strange. Something walks beneath the ice. Jon felt his stomach knot. He offered the caravan half their oat sacks, ordered 3 wounded born on litters, then pushed his men harder. At midnight, thin auroras writhed overhead, pale white, not green, as if ghosts of lights. Off starboard, the sea ice cracked in sheets, booming like distant drums. When they reached Eastwatch's gate the next dawn, they saw the walls peppered with scorch marks, arrow shafts jutting outwards. Brothers in black aimed crossbows. Weary eyes widened at Ghost's approach. Open, Jon barked. Lord Commander Snow returns. A chain rattled. The portcullis lifted inches, groaned, halted. A face appeared between winch beams. Cotter Pike, commander of Eastwatch, beard crusted with salt and blood. Snow, you bastard, he rasped. Thought you were dead. Not yet, Jon answered. He ducked inside, surveyed the ruins. The armory roof collapsed, stables burnt. A ship's mast stabbed into the yard like a spear cast by giants. Report, Pike spat. Dead raided from the water. Climbed the hulls we scuttled. We burned 70, but more came. Stannis took his host west to meet you, left us 12 barrels of wildfire. Lit them at sea, iced nothing. Now we hold, sailing for no one. Jon felt the weight of every syllable. We rebuild defense, he said. Dragonglass arrowheads. Where? Locked in cellar. Keys lost under corpses. Pike grunted. Your task. So began 4 days of grim labor. Men hauled burnt planks from ruined docks, patched palisades with driftwood. Jon led a team into the collapsed cellar, crawling through gaps where cold brine seeped, to retrieve crates of rough-hewn obsidian. He emerged coated in grime, but he pressed chips into every archer's palm. Aim for skull or heart. Through it all the sea sang, a low, thrumming dirge. Nights brought shapes under ice. Pale faces pressed against the glassy surface, then sucked back into the black. Brothers muttered prayers. Jon forced them to practice spear thrusts until arms quivered. On the 5th night, a horn blew twice, riders from the west. Jon rushed to the rampart in time to see standards flicker. Fiery heart of R'hllor within crowned stag, beside direwolf of Stark. Stannis arrived. Stannis Baratheon rode a gaunt bay gelding, jaw clenched against wind. Beside him Davos Seaworth guided his mount with sailor's ease. Behind marched 2,000 spearmen in bright Baratheon yellow, half bearing shields painted over with 7 pointed stars defaced, half with painted red hearts. Melisandre glided at the column's tail on a palfrey white as foam, ruby at her throat pulsing like a heartbeat where none should thrum in such cold. Jon descended the ramp to meet them, cloak snapping. He knelt only briefly, respect for allies, not vassalage. Stannis dismounted stiffly. "You hold?" the king said flat. "I thought you lost." "Not yet," Jon repeated. Stannis surveyed the shattered keep. "We strengthen these walls, then march west to Winterfell. Bolton filth stains the north." "Bolton's bastard is dead," Jon replied. "North stands with Robb Stark now." Stannis's frown deepened. "Stark bent knee to me by Raven." "No," Jon said. "He will treat, but not yield sovereignty. He serves as Lord Protector until the night is ended." Jon held the king's gaze. "We need every sword north of the neck against the dead. Settling crowns can wait." Stannis's knuckles whitened upon his gauntlet. He looked to Melisandre. Firelight seemed to flare in her pupils, though no torch burned nearby. "The prince that was promised war cannot wait," she murmured. "The night's king gathers power beneath a sky of bleeding stars." She turned to Jon. "You saw the specter on Yesterfield, an icy crown. He watches you." Jon ignored her chill whisper. "My scouts sighted large forces of whites converging along the shivering sea. We must burn them before they outflank the wall. A fleet saves more lives than a siege." Stannis's jaw flexed. Davos stepped between. "Your Grace, a fleet we have. Some 5 galleys repaired, oars patched. If we angle them north of Skagos, we could land sorties behind the dead. Scatter them with flame barrels." Jon seized that. "Dragonglass bombs. Obsidian shrapnel. We load the wildfire barrels with shards." Stannis considered. "I would need every mason and alchemist." "Take them," Jon urged. "But while you raid, we must hold Eastwatch. If the wall fails, retreat becomes moot." After hours of terse deliberation, a plan formed. Stannis would command the fleet northward with Davos. Jon would fortify Eastwatch, send ravens to Robb for provisions. Melisandre would remain to watch the skies for portents she claimed necessary. Jon cared little for her flames, but the men feared her less than the night, and fear harnessed pointed the right way was another kind of sword. Robb reached White Harbor as a sleet storm battered the docks. Crates of grain split on the wharf, wheat kernels scattering like golden hail into gray water. He dismounted under Lord Wyman's towering shadow. The Manderly lord bowed deeper than his girth should allow. "Your Grace." "Lord Protector," Robb corrected. Wyman's blue eyes twinkled. "A title may change, but honor roots deeper." He waddled toward the city gates. "Come, warmth and drink await. We sail at dawn with the tide." Inside, the Merman's Keep feasts had been canceled. Instead, long trestles groaned beneath dried cod, pickled herring, oatmeal loaves. Soldiers filled sacks, loading holds of 15 cog ships. Sansa watched, directing scribes. Her quill tallied bushels, her voice calm. When 2 ragged children approached clutching a torn direwolf banner, she knelt, accepted it, and promised they would not starve come spring. That night, Wyman conferred with Robb beside a brazier. "I dispatched 3,000, he said. "The rest guard the city against Lannister fleets." Robb raised brows. "Word of sell sails reaching Woodland?" "Not yet," Wyman admitted. "But rumors creep like rats. Best set traps early." Catelyn entered with news of ravens. Ramsay dead confirmed by multiple houses. Northern levies near 25,000 now under Stark. Robb felt a swell of resolve. "We march on Wintertown within a fortnight. From there, I lead a relief column to the wall." "And Deepwood?" Catelyn asked. "Galbart Glover rides east. Asha holds but cannot stall forever." Robb's eyes darkened. "I trust her for now." Catelyn laid a hand on his arm. "Trust but rope your horse. Ironborn alliances shift with tide." Robb grimaced acknowledgement. Sansa later joined her mother on the parapets, where torches flickered like willow wisps. Snowflakes melted on her lashes. "Do you think father would know us?" she asked. Catelyn swallowed. "He would never forget his girls." Sansa brushed tears. "Then let us make him proud." In 10 Towers, Asha Greyjoy studded a new map with iron nails. Sell-sail raids, Kraken patrols, Deepwood's thinning food stores. The door thundered open, and in slouched Christopher Botley, cheeks raw from sea wind. "Lannister galleys weigh anchor by Pebbleton," he croaked. 40 sails. Asha threw back her head and laughed. 40? Thought Lion Lords braver. She slapped his arm. "Gather the black tide. We strike at dawn." They sailed that night instead, striking while cell sails guzzled wine in candlelit bays. Silent as night, the iron-borne ships ghosted between enemy hulls, grappling hooks kissing wood. By the time Lannister watchmen shouted alarm, fires roared up mast sails dipped in pitch. Asha cut her way along a quarterdeck, each swing leaving red arcs upon the snow-flecked boards. At dawn, only 3 cell-sail ships remained afloat, limping seaward, banners ablaze. Greyjoy horns brayed triumph while Deepwood peasants lining the cliffs raised fists in gratitude to unlikely saviors. Asha cleaned her axe on sailcloth. "Send ravens to Winterfell," she ordered. "Tell the wolf I kept his seas." Back at Eastwatch, Melisandre climbed the highest tower nightly, hair whipping in gales, ruby glowing as though feeding on lightning. Jon found her there on a moonless eve, arms wide, eyes closed. "You seek warmth where warmth fled," he said. She smiled without turning. "I feel the Lord's fire in every breath, even here." "Do you feel nothing?" "Only cold," Jon answered. "Cold and duty. A hard marriage," she murmured. "But necessary. Fire weds ice, births change." She pivoted, gaze scanning his face. "When the darkness comes, you must ride beyond the wall one last time." Jon's patience thinned. "Prophecy again?" "Vision." She extended palm. The ruby flared, throwing blood-red light on his features. "I saw a heart beating within ice, bound by black iron. If that heart breaks, day dawns eternal. You must break it." Jon stepped back. "I break what threatens the living, nothing more." Melisandre inclined her head. "So you shall." She looked east to the sea where frost gleamed. "Your brother sails to you with grain and hope, but another sails too, one with sails of midnight and laughs like carrion."
Euron Greyjoy.
Jon guessed. She only smiled. "A storm's name matters less than its waves." Euron crows I did indeed slice the shivering sea aboard Silence, hull painted red with fresh blood. His fleet had sacked Ibn, taken thralls enough to line deck rails. Now he aimed prow west, hungry whispers telling of chaos ripe in Westeros. A war of ice and ghosts sounded Lark's song to him. He would carve a throne from northern skulls, perhaps. His black priests muttered to drowned gods as wind howled promises. He sent swift longships ahead as outriders. One sighted Stannis' galleys south of Skagos and slipped away unseen, bearing word back to the Crow's Eye.
Euron Grinned, tapped Valyrian steel Aepech.
"A king adrift without a crown," he crooned. "Let's pluck him to pieces." Stannis' fleet rode through berg-littered shallows into a cove beneath towering ice cliffs. Davos directed men to drop anchor quietly. They unloaded casks of wildfire and crates of obsidian shards, rigging each to detonate via slow fuse. Snow fell thick as down, waves hissed on pebbles. That night they sighted whites marching the coastline in silent file. Stannis ordered barrage. Catapults flung green fire bombs arcing into the dead ranks. Explosions blossomed, green suns amid falling snow. When the flames subsided, obsidian splinters glittered where whites had stood. Only scorched ice remained. The men cheered in hushed awe, but cheers froze when horns of polished bone wailed from seaward. Black sails loomed against Aurora. Longships rowed by silent crews glided into the cove. At their prow stood a tall figure clad in gold-trimmed mail, one eye shining like a star. He raised a horn bound with finger bones and blew again, a note deep enough to make ice tremble. Davos spat. "Greyjoy Reavers." Stannis drew Lightbringer, a red-gold sword blazing as if embers lived in its steel. Its glow shimmered off the ice, matching Aurora's overhead. "Then we burn Reavers too," he declared. Battle erupted. Greyjoy arrows streaked, piercing sailors on deck. Euron vaulted railing, black cloak streaming, axe slicing through a flaming torch. Sparks flew. Lightbringer met the axe with sizzling thunder. Davos rallied men on starboard. They rolled wildfire barrels along gangplanks toward approaching longships. A lucky arrow ignited a fuse. Green fire cascaded down a ship's prow, engulfing oarsmen. Screams rose, yet Euron thrived in chaos. He ducked Lightbringer, kicked Stannis' knee, forced the king to one leg. "The tide belongs to the Crow Eye," he crowed. Before he could finish, an obsidian-tipped spear hurled by a spearman struck his pauldron, shattering. Euron laughed, ripped it free, flung it aside. Stone knives from children. More ironborn swarmed the deck. Davos found himself back-to-back with Stannis, sword ringing. Lightbringer seared through flesh, but enemies seemed endless. On the cliffs above, Melisandre had followed unseen. She watched the melee below, ruby bright enough to outshine moonlight. She whispered a prayer, palms dancing. Flames flared along the rocky ridge, then descended like fiery rain. Globs of living fire swirling in unnatural arcs. Where they landed among Ironborn, shrieks escalated. Euron turned skyward. Fire reflected in his single eye, but he grinned wider. "Red Witch," he shouted. "I have charms older than your god." He drew a dagger carved of black dragon horn etched with runes. He slashed his palm, let blood hit the deck, and sang in a tongue none understood. A sudden gale roared, snuffing torches. Waves heaved, smashing 2 Baratheon galleys against ice. Men tumbled screaming. Davos fought to reach the helm, but a spar swept him into freezing water. Salt filled his lungs, darkness closed. Last he saw was Lightbringer's red glow slicing the night. Ravens arrived at Eastwatch 3 days later carrying desperate pleas. Jon read them by lamp in the map room, jaw set. Stannis' fleet shattered, Davos missing, Melisandre vanished, Euron roams. Survivors limping toward the wall. Satin watched his commander's face pale. "Is the king dead?" "Alive," Jon whispered. "But broken." He paced. "Greyjoy sails will block our eastern flank. We must hold on land or all is lost." Cotter Pike limped in, forehead bandaged. Storm smashed 2 towers off the wall north o' Eastwatch. "We patch with timber, but..." "No time," Jon finished. He straightened. "Send ravens to Winterfell and White Harbor. We require siege engineers, stonemasons, pitch barrels. Every able body." Pike nodded. "Aye. And you?" Jon looked beyond the wall where auroras bled ominous crimson. "I ride for Hardhome," Satin gasped. "Hardhome is cursed. No living man." Jon cut him off. "Thousands of free folk remain trapped. If we leave them, they die and swell the dead host. And there may lie answers." He thought of Melisandre's heart within ice. Pike grunted. "You'll need ships. We've none afloat." "Then I sail with what floats," Jon responded. "Or walk on water if need be." Ghost barked low, as if to say even a dire wolf knew folly. Jon smiled grimly. "You'll stay," he told the wolf. "Guard the wall, guard them all." Ghost snarled dissent but sat. Meanwhile Robb's host marched north from Wintertown under skies the color of iron. Peasants lined the road, lending sleighs to carry barley, axes, children half-naked in desperation yet cheering the wolf banners. Robb allowed none to linger. Speed mattered more than applause. As they crossed the last river, scouts returned with dire tidings. Lannister outriders sacked Barrow Hall, burning granaries. Robb detached Manderly cavalry to screen his flank. At dusk they clashed with gold-clad knights beneath pale willows. Sansa watched far from the line, heart pounding at the thunder of hooves, the screams. When Manderly trumpets signaled victory and Lannister knights fled, she allowed herself a single breath of relief before tending the wounded. One stable boy her age held entrails in shaking hands, murmuring for his mother. She knelt and sang an old lullaby until the torchlight left his eyes. That night Robb visited her by the triage fires. "You cannot see such things and remain a child," he said quietly. "I was never a child," Sansa answered, wiping blood from her cheek. I only wore costumes. Robb stared at flames dancing. Father would say war strips lies from men. I wonder what remains. From shadows Caitlin listened, weeping inwardly for children thrown into harsh truths. At Deepwood, Asha fortified the motte, expecting further lion incursions. Ravens brought news of Euron's assault on Stannis. Her jaw clenched. Though she despised her uncle, his chaos threatened her bargains. She penned a letter to Robb, Ironborn stand. But seas darken. Light your beacons, Wolf King. She posted 4 longships north to escort supply cogs along the coast, warriors with salt in veins and grudges older than kingdoms. On the 29th day after Castle Black's battle, Jon Snow embarked from Eastwatch on the ragged Cog Maiden's Lament, the only ship reparable in time. Its hull rattled with each swell. Sails patched with black and white fabric billowed beneath gloom. Crew comprised a handful of Night's Watch sailors and Tormund, who insisted on steering though he knew nothing of tillers. They skirted spires of ice, each shaped like monstrous fangs. At nights the sea moaned and wights walked on floes, arms outstretched, frost blooming on ragged clothes. The crew hurled dragonglass javelins, shattered them. Yet for every fallen, 5 more watched from afar, like spectators at some grim tourney. On the 3rd dawn Hardhome appeared, a shelf of dark beach backed by cliff ruins. Smoke still rose where huts burned months prior.
No birds.
No sound. The smell reached them first, rot and salt and something ancient. Jon ordered anchor thrown. They rowed ashore in silence. Snow crunched underfoot though sky was clear. Tormund muttered, "Spirits coil here like grubs in meat." They found bodies rosin mid-run, mouths open in silent cries. Women huddled over infants turned to blue porcelain. Jon's stomach tightened, but he pressed on. He sought survivors. Atop a ruined hall they discovered a signal pyre, long burnt out. Beneath, a sealed cellar door barred with iron. Jon smashed the latch. The door creaked open. Inside crouched nearly 200 souls, skinny, staring, too weak even to stand. They blinked at torchlight like creatures long subterranean. A gaunt girl whispered, "We prayed the snow wolf would come." Jon knelt. "I am he." He distributed dried fish, water. Hope flickered, but beyond cliffs a horn of ice rang. A deep, resonant note. Jon rushed outside. Along the northern ridge a figure stood astride an undead elk larger than any warhorse. Crown of ice, cloak of frost. The Night's King raised a hand. Snow whirled upward in a vortex, blotting sky. Wights emerged from forests, thousands, marching toward Hardhome. Tormund swore, "We leave now or never."
Jeune festin possible.
He glanced at the survivors, heard their thin cries. He should flee, yet what good was saving some to doom more later? He gripped Longclaw. "We hold till dusk. Ships will return." He prayed they would. They built barricades of driftwood, soaked in lamp oil. Sailors strung bows, obsidian-tipped arrows. Children dragged stones for makeshift walls. Jon stood at the breach, snow swirling into his hair, sight fixed on the Night's King. When the first wights reached arrow range, volleys cut them down, shards of obsidian spraying like black stars. The dead pressed forward indifferent to losses. Jon met them sword flashing. Each strike split ice ribs, but numbers swarmed. Tormund roared beside him, club flattening skulls. Hours blurred into frozen fury, until horns sounded from the sea. Sails approached. Manderley cogs escorted by ironborn longships, banners of wolves and krakens side by side. On the prow stood Robb Stark, snow coating his beard, gray cloak whipping. Catapults aboard the cogs hurled wildfire obsidian bombs into enemy ranks, green fire seething. The detonation scattered wights, but the Night's King raised both arms. Green fire dimmed, sizzling into steam. The undead marched anew. On shore Robb leapt from a longship, sword drawn. Mother Direwolf and Kraken fought shoulder to shoulder, Northmen and Ironborn charging line. Jon felt his brother's presence like warmth. "You sailed into death," Jon shouted over din. "I followed your ridiculous example." Robb shouted back, slashing a white. They fought back to back. The Night's King dismounted, stalked forward, ice sword shimmering. Jon stepped to meet him, longclaw raised. Robb stood at Jon's flank. 2 brothers, 2 swords, Valyrian steel and castle forged. Snow swirled into a cyclone around the Night's King as he approached, each footstep freezing the sand glass hard. When the blades met, sound vanished, replaced by a pressure that rang inside skulls. Longclaw locked against the ice sword. Frost crept along the Valyrian steel, hissing where Lollaress forge lines glowed faint from Melisandre's earlier blessings. Robb swung at the Night's King's exposed flank, but the ice crown flicked a hand. Robb's blade shattered like sugar glass, fragments scattering. Robb stumbled. Jon roared, forced Longclaw up, driving the Night's King back a step. Blue eyes flared. Snow echoed with a shriek. Shards of ice shot from the ground, impaling 3 free folk nearby. Jon barely dodged. In that heartbeat, a war horn of bronze rang from the sea. A lone galley, battered but intact, slid into harbor, Stannis' flagship. Upon its prow, Lightbringer blazed crimson in night, held high by the king's gauntlet fist. He leaped onto the sand, blade shedding sparks, and charged. Lightbringer met the ice sword from the side, forcing the Night's King to pivot. 3 heroes formed a triangle. Jon pressing front, Stannis left. Robb regained footing with a scavenged dragonglass axe at right. Together they attacked. Blows rained, Valyrian steel biting, blessed fire scorching, obsidian hacking. The Night's King gave no sound, only glare. Finally Robb found an opening, burying the axe in the Night's King's ribcage. Obsidian cracked, frost spiderwebbed across the blade. The Night's King stabbed Robb through the thigh, ice blade piercing flesh. Robb cried out but held axe firm. Jon seized the moment, sweeping Longclaw across the icy crown.
Style sang.
The crown sheared. A crack split down the Night's King's forehead. Light poured from within, pale blue turning brighter till it blazed white. Snow exploded outward. The Night's King burst like shattered crystal, shards evaporating before touching ground. Every white on the field collapsed in mid-strike, bodies slack, eyes extinguished. Silence fell, accentuated by crackling flames still smoldering. Robb collapsed. Jon caught him, eased him to ground. Blood spurted from the thigh wound, but not bright arterial. Jon bound it with a torn banner. Stannis planted Lightbringer upright, breathing hard, gaze sweeping the field of inert corpses. Melisandre appeared suddenly by his side as if birthed from smoke. She stared at the fading pale lights. The heart within ice shattered, she whispered, awed. But shards may yet beat. Jon ignored her. He held Robb's hand. You live. Robb smiled faintly. Bled to save your stubborn hide. Worth a scar. Jon laughed, relief shaking him. Ships burned in harbor. Dawn crept, pale rose behind ragged clouds. Survivors gathered, stunned. 200 freed wildlings wept, some kneeling to Jon, others thanking gods old and new. Stannis surveyed them, jaw tight. A victory, he allowed. A reprieve, Jon corrected. He faced the vast silent north, where horizons stretched endless. One commander of the dead is gone, but winter remains. Robb winced as he sat. Then the living unite or perish. Stannis sheathed Lightbringer. We sail to Eastwatch, then march to Winterfell. The realm must see this. He turned to Robb. Lord Protector, King in the North, perhaps. Whatever title, you fought well. Robb dipped his head. So did you, Your Grace. Stannis' mouth twitched, closest to a smile it ever managed. Let us share the crown of survival, then argue about gold later. Tormund whooped, lifting a limp white arm as trophy before tossing it into a bonfire. Laughter, ragged and incredulous, rippled through the camp. For the first time in memory, men of every banner laughed together. Jon stood and looked to the sun rising through tattered clouds. It glimmered off frozen waves, painting the world in pink-gold light. That light touched the faces of men and women who had been foes hours before, brothers of the Watch beside free folk, Ironborn arm in arm with Northmen, Baratheon spearmen sharing bread with Manderly levies. The wall between them had cracked alongside the ice crown. He thought of his father, of Ned Stark's words. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Jon closed his eyes, letting dawn warm the chill ache inside. They were a pack now, and winter, though fierce, would have to face them all. Days later, as wounded were ferried back to Eastwatch and casks of grain unloaded, ravens carried the tale southward. Of the Night's King shattered, of kings united, of hope kindled like a candle in storm. Some in King's Landing scoffed. Cersei called it northern lies. Others trembled. Across the sea in Essos, a queen with silver hair and 3 growing dragons listened to the rumors brought by a shy scribe and felt a familiar tug toward the land of her birth. The world, it seemed, shifted upon axes none could predict. At Winterfell, Bran Stark dreamed beneath the weirwood of a heart of ice splintering, of ravens becoming starlight, of wolves leading dragons through a broken gate of frost. He woke with tears of relief and fear both. At Castle Black Jon ascended the wall at dusk, alone. He gazed into the wild north where auroras now danced a shy green once more. Ghost pressed against his thigh. In the hush he spoke softly. "Father, I kept them safe a while longer. Keep watch with me." Wind answered in sighs through crenels. Jon drew Longclaw, set it point down in ice, and knelt. Far below, campfires flickered, the heartbeat of thousands who believed again that dawn would come. He would not fail them. He would not forget the price already paid. Night deepened, stars glittering like shards of shattered crowns. Jon Snow remained, sentinel on ice, until first light gilded the edge of the world. Proof that even the longest night must yield, however briefly, to dawn.